Another episode of Cap or No Cap. I am your host, Kevin C. Meggett, and you've been here more than once or twice, so you're going to introduce yourself today. Who am I with?
Well, it's an honor and pleasure to be with you on Cap or No Cap. I'm Andy King.
That's right. Yeah. That's our guest host. Been riding with me. He's doing a great job too. I mean, I actually love it. So, no, thank you for coming and chopping it up with me. Today we have a great episode. We have a great show. Mr. King and I, we just going to talk. We're going to kind of chop it up, and today's show is going to be the politics of politics. So, there's a lot of things that go on behind scenes, but we only see things when it's up and close and in your face. So we're going to try to pull the curtains back of the things that happen behind the scene, So, one of the first things that I'd like to do, there's an election coming up, I believe tomorrow. Is it tomorrow they start the
early voting starts.
It's early voting.
Yes.
Is that citywide or just?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so here in New York City, you have early voting that starts tomorrow to determine mayor, city council, and Bronx borough presidents, Bronx borough president, Queens borough presidents, so forth and so on. So, and we have to pretty much figure out how to get our vote to count, because the census is now that we work for politicians, and that's not how the Constitution was actually written.
Correct.
They are supposed to work for us.
Mm-hmm. Be a servant of the people.
To serve the people, right? And I don't think it's always it has. We're so far removed from that. Why do you think? Why do you even think that?
Well, there's so many agendas that has taken away the honesty of how this country was formed, and regardless of the challenges that when this country was formed, when there was real debate and litigation that was going on of how to form this country, it came with a real strong purpose and motivation to making sure that everyone was treated with some sense of fairness. Until those who look like you and I were actually able to have a seat at the table. And when Reconstruction actually hit, you were talking about a number of black congressmen that did get into Congress, and blacks were prospering. Today's world, there's such an agenda that the conversations about how someone can convince you to vote for them without having any essence in their being. So whoever can tell the greater narrative. Not that they lived one, but if they could put a story together and convince you that why my narrative is better than this next person's narrative, then that's the game plan. It's a game. So politics has become a big game. I've watched, as a former council member, I've watched a lot of trickery. I've watched a lot of cunningness. I've watched a lot of deceit. I watched a lot of people not being just good human beings. They tell you something today, then they do something totally different tomorrow. If the agenda didn't work for them, and that's why one thing I will say about politicians, they do make decisions on the best interest of the politician. And that means that a district can fall apart or people don't get the proper services because it's politically not correct for me to say standing on this side of the road, then I will go against everything that should have been in my core values in order for me to survive. So when you ask the question, why are we're working for the politicians? Because you've watched, and as a former union person, I've watched union endorsed candidates that weren't worthy of an endorsement. I've always told a lot of union leadership, I said, we should be in a place right now that you should pick someone to run for office who comes out of your house. Because now what you end up doing, you get number of labor people in office, then you can make real dedicated commitments to that agenda. Not I'm saying I'm going to pick somebody and I'm going to endorse it, and then I got to lobby that person. I got to go beg this person to do the things that benefit labor. But if labor put their own people in office, then that labor person comes in labor strong. One of the things I brought as a labor person, I brought labor to the table. My conversation was about how do we make sure that the everyday working man and woman and families have an opportunity to a fair chance in life. Regardless of your color, your creed, your religious beliefs, whatever that was, it was about how do we present fairness to the table in every conversation. And I think once you take that, you take yourself out of the equation and work for the essence of the people, then you're okay. You should be okay. Your moral compass should always be okay when you're working for the rights of the people. But if you don't have a moral compass, then you're just all over the place. You're all over the place. So I've watched today that people fall in favor and in love with people with people who are running for office or elected office. Sometimes they haven't earned it. And I'll stop right here. I've watched and I've witnessed the numbers of a number of people who've got elected with very small numbers. So in case, if you get elected, point in case, you get elected to the city council with 3,000 votes, you go down to city council, or you're not beholden to your district because only 3,000 people voted for you out of the district. Right. You're beholden to every interest that comes to your door. Say, I need this. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Whoever paid who was funding your campaign,
right?
Because it wasn't the 3,000 people came out and voted for you.
Exactly.
So that is the sad part that happens today. That I think allows candidates, when they do get elected, they get elected with small numbers. They go down there with a sense of weakness, and they're owned by the people who run the shop.
And you touched on a lot of things, and I'm going to try to break some of the things that you set up. The Reconstruction period. That's how long we've had issues in this country. But here in America, and this is for the people that are looking and viewing us all over the world. Here in America, we are the people that built this country are grossly ignored, and they live under the worst conditions. They're given the worst conditions. Poor food, poor housing. These are not civil rights. These are human rights. Correct. And we're locked out. And I really want to emphasize that we're locked out of opportunities, not because we are the worst. They lock us out because we're the very best. And so when you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Black Wall Street, and I urge you guys to, if you're not familiar, get familiar with these terms. This country knows what'll happen if we are left alone. We tend to prosper.
Exactly.
And but you can't have prosperity because it's like a scale, Mr. King. It either it balances or one's going to be heavier than the other. Mm-hmm. If I'm winning, you're losing. Right. If you're losing, I'm winning. Mm-hmm. That's the name of the game. And it's a shame that so many people come here that are not necessarily, they may look like us, but they're not necessarily of us, meaning that they may have migrated from someplace else here, ran on the narrative of our ancestors and said, I look just like you, but this is, but they have a separate agenda, and they're not fueling the betterment of what we need to do. And I think it's a shame that we are reduced to this as a society. And I'll give you a case point scenario, but you already know this. How many foundational Black Americans are in city council right now?
Oh, wow. That number is a small number.
If it even exists.
Yeah, if I was to guess,
I was a betting man, I'd say it'd be zero.
Well, let me see. I was one.
Right. You was one.
I was one.
Right.
Let me see. I think it might have been myself. If I go through the numbers, it might have been myself, Debbie Rose, and maybe Lori Combo. But
I'm not sure about Lori either. Maybe we could get on the phone and ask her one day if she found it. But I think she may be of Haitian descent or something like that. I'm not certain. But I believe maybe Charles Barron's wife.
Inez Barron. Inez Barron. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I believe she.
But now my
yeah.
argument is, right, every other group of people are allowed to be unapologetically proud of who they are in this country.
Correct.
In other words, if you Jamaican, you could be unapologetically proud to be Jamaican. Mm-hmm. If you Dominican, you could unapologetically proud to be Dominican. Mm-hmm. If you're Puerto Rican, I could go on and on. The point that I'm trying to make is, when I say the same thing, I'm demonized for being that of what I am. As a matter of fact, it was my ancestors that built this.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, it's almost an oxymoron. I want to run on your narrative, and I could go as far as the former president of the United States, Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. I'm not throwing him any shade, but he and even Kamala Harris, they ran on the narrative of the foundational Black American and their struggle, only to get into office and implement a policy and procedure that has nothing to do with foundational Black Americans, and that's the narrative. I promise you wholeheartedly, I'm going to change that, or I am going to work very diligently to change that. So, I mean, those are some of the politics. Now, let me ask you something else. Like groups, and I get this all the time. And see, we have to learn how to organize, because every other group organize except foundational Black Americans. We're very fragmented.
Yes, we are.
And that's what we got to fix. That's what we got to fix, family. But Ruben Diaz Sr. once said that, and shout out to Ruben Diaz Sr. Most people don't like him, but I love the old man. I love him just for being painfully honest, even if it's just his truth. He said the LGBTQ community runs city council. That's something I wholeheartedly believe. I don't have anything against gay people. I do have something when you start to organize as an organization. In other words, you can be openly gay, but when you're saying I am now LGBTQ, you have now become an organization, and I have to watch you, because I believe a lot of LGBTQ folks could be very racist in a lot of things that they do also. And in fact, I believe they are more racist than heterosexual white supremacists. So, I digress. How true, from your experience in being in City Hall, is Ruben Diaz Sr.'s statement?
His statement is accurate.
It's very accurate?
It's accurate.
Okay.
The LGBT community has great influence in the city council. There are a lot of people, not only they are part of that community, who work inside City Hall and are just parts. And the body tends to favor and flavor their agenda.
Okay.
Anybody who opposes their agenda gets ostracized till they get criticized till they get ostracized. I put it to you that way. And Councilmember Diaz was one. He made his statement, and when he made his statement, they took his committee away from him. No one ever dared to ask the question, was it true? But how dare he say it? But isn't there something called freedom of speech? Don't we have some amendment rights that allows us to speak? Nothing he said was derogatory. He stated an obvious fact.
Right.
But then they were like, how dare you? There's no difference. They would have said, you know what? All the white people run City Hall. Well, do white people run City Hall? Is it true or false?
Right.
But no one can say, how dare you say that. If people have said, well, you know, all the black men run City Hall. Well, did black men run City Hall? Is it true or false?
Right.
Not as, how dare you say that. Well, homosexual community runs City Hall. How dare you say that? Well, is it true or false? That should have been the first question, as opposed to going into how dare he and then chastise him and take a committee away from him that was so important to the taxi drivers of the city of New York. This is when taxi drivers were getting killed. They were having problems with licenses. They weren't being protected fairly. So I came up with a piece of legislation and Lori Cumble came up. We were trying to figure something out and working through his committee because the Transportation Committee was overwhelmed. So they carved out this piece specifically for taxi drivers. This was a very important committee, but that didn't matter. Why? Because the agenda of the LGBT community thought their feelings were hurt. So you hurt an industry of people.
Yes,
that was the reality. You hurt an industry of people because your feelings were hurt.
That's crazy.
Come on.
Right.
Not fair. Not a good thing.
And I would love to get Ruben Diaz Sr. on the show at some particular point in time. But that's amazing, and I remember that story. I remember it very vividly. I was actually following it, and I also said that the same way that they have rights, that the government has, they have rights to be protected. So do people that don't agree. But we're going to take a real quick break, and we're going to come right back. This is Kevin Meggick from Cap and No Cap.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
We're back. And we were talking, Mr. King and I were talking about the politics of politics. So that was very deep what you just told me about the LGBTQ community. You know, like, again, I don't have anything. I don't hate anybody, but people that have an agenda, especially when you latch and attach yourself to my agenda to get resources that my people should be getting, I have a problem with. I believe that, you know, foundational Black Americans have been at the back of the line for the longest, and the line went around the corner, and we finally started seeing the usher, and we could see the string, like, oh wow, we getting close. And then a group of people come in called LGBTQ, and they come and they put us right back around the corner in the back of the line. And I just don't think any issue in America right now is more important than resolving the foundational Black American issue, because it's the longest standing unresolved issue that is here. Yeah. We are second-class citizens. We are ostracized we're economically castrated. The problem is they can't kill us quick enough, because we keep multiplying, you know.
We can't multiply like the sand of the sea.
That's right. So, you know, we can't incarcerate them, you know. They're doing all of the time, you know. So America has always had this Black problem, and she loves to wag her fingers at countries like China and Russia and Iran, and they look and say, hey, shame on you with your human rights. But look at, you know, and their pushback is becoming like, how dare you? Look at how you treat your citizens.
Exactly. We have more citizens locked up than we do have walking in the neighborhoods.
Right.
When I learned, I was the chair of the juvenile justice system, and when I learned that young Black men under the age of 25 roughly made up like 5% of the population, but they made up 45% of incarceration price. I'm like, how do you
justify that?
Yeah, we're a small percentage in the neighborhood, but you're filling your jails up. You know, more than half, or almost half of your jail population is out from our communities. So yeah, America cannot really hold other countries accountable. The story of their oppression and their rules and their laws were oppressive, and people keep forgetting America was designed not for everyone. You know, the Black in America was not considered a whole individual according to their laws. And all the laws that they were creating were based around the white, as we would say, the white male, Catholic male at the time. So not even their woman, you know, so it was designed for them. So even though we had these Bill of Rights and there are amendments that come in to offer some freedoms, offer some rights, but a lot of it doesn't really totally negate some of the other things. And states, to show you how crazy this is, you know, the states can make rules. They can't make rules that supersede the United States Constitution, but they can make oppressive rules as well. Right. And if they don't get challenged, then that be the law of the land of their states. So, you know, there's a lot of conflicting rules when you talk about the 51 states, depending on what state you're in. Because it's ironic, you can do some things in Alabama, you can get away with some things in Alabama that you can't get away with in New Jersey. You can do some things in Washington and you can't get away with it in Minnesota. You can do some things in Florida and you can't get away with it. You can get away with some stuff in Florida you can't get away with it in New York. So you got to have one set of rules so everyone, if we say this is to be the land of the free, then you got to treat people with free rules. You got to treat people with kindness. You got to treat people with careness. But more importantly, you got to treat people with the opportunity to have options to live a successful life. Right. You can't oppress me on one end and then say, hey, I'm giving you some housing, but I'm going to feed you some crappy food. I'm going to make it challenging for you to get health care, but you know what? I'm going to be paying the people supposed to be taking care of you. And they get fed and they get full while our Black and brown communities suffer every day. Right. So you know, it's a sad reality that we live within America. As great as America is, it definitely can't get better. And then one day it will, when all these people who live on this soil have the options to great opportunities, not justified few.
I absolutely agree, but I don't think it'll ever get better until you resolve the oldest issue that's on the books. Until you
You're right.
resolve the
Right.
foundational Black American issue,
Right.
it's not going to get better. And I'm going to let you know, and you're a man of faith, you know, which is deep rooted into the Bible. You know, they say you reap what you sow, right?
Right.
So that's what's happening right now. So you think that all of Europe had slaves, America had slaves, right? Now you look at it from what made them great is now weakening them. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, white supremacy was empowered by excluding us because it took all of the wealth, all of the resources, right? So now no one ever paid attention and thought one day China, during the Cold War, that we would build an economic super giant named China, you know, and keep in mind, China's older than us as a nation. So they had a long time to plan, you know what I mean? But now what's happening now is Europe is weak. The only thing that makes Europe strong is the fact that they're unified as a collective. They collectively got to come together to be a strength. But if you were to break Italy and Spain and France, they're weak.
Yeah.
They you know, by them creating the European Union is what kept them strong. America is becoming weak. And China's I think the only reason we're not speaking Mandarin right now is that we have a strong military. That's number one. And number two, I also believe that, you know, the foundational Black American, the exclusion of us is made us weak, because if you teach us something different, we'll do something different. So what I mean by that is the narrative is what we can be in this society as a foundational Black American is either an entertainer, an athlete, or drug dealer. Those are your three options, to the point where we begin to start to believe the same thing. But if you start teaching us, no, we're going to open up the door for coding and power gridding and green jobs and so forth, we'll do something different.
Right.
And that could actually become our strength.
Yeah.
Does that make any?
It
makes 100%.
And it goes back to offering options.
Right.
You know, you don't offer the options to people. These are the limited options that you offer us. Now, while you might want to say, I want to bring coding to your community, but if you have failed the education system when I was 8 years old,
Right.
and I
Right.
can't read,
Right.
I would never figure
Figure
out
out how to code.
How to
Right.
code.
Right.
So all these things are connected, and they out like talking in this tunnel vision that, oh, we'll take care of this, we'll take care of that,
Right.
and like they're separate, where all leads
It's
to
all
one
connected.
path. Yeah, and it
Right.
leads to a path to success. But if you kill my early path of getting the foundation of education inside my brain and letting my brain be able to operate, be able to function, my social skills are good. You know, I'm good to be around people. If you take away all of that in the early stages of someone's life, there's no way you're going to present them with something that's going to say, hey, it's going to lead them to a path of success as a human being. But they try to act like there is no correlation. You know, when we offered it to the schools, we offered it to the Black community. We just didn't have, even offered the jobs.
Right.
But there was no one there because there was no one skilled enough for those jobs.
Right.
But you killed the foundation of if they have those skills when it was time to present those jobs for them anyway. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You know, so again, here we go with the oppressive mentality of this country and saying a few will get, I've learned, you know, supply and demand, checks and balances. So you're always going to have an upper class, that 1% who's managing everything.
Right.
Then you have your working class, and then you have those who are under the poverty level and impoverished. And you got to keep that for checks and balances, so there's always a balance in everything. Because if everybody's wealthy and rich, who's going to clean the toilets? Who's going to drive the bus?
Right.
Because I'm not yet a millionaire today who's cleaning toilets, who's street sweeping, who's doing any of that stuff.
And I'm so glad you said that, because you have a lot of social democrats, you know, you have a lot of social democrats that want to offer everything. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The reality is America is a capitalist society, and it's never going to change. And my problem with social democrats is that they're offering Christmas gifts on Halloween. We're gonna give you it. We're gonna give you this. We're gonna give you that. We're brand new green jobs the very first day, and we're going to spend $4 trillion to fix our infrastructure. And until you hit them with the hard reality is, how are you going to pay for this? And then they start babbling, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's like, we have to figure out, because would you agree that America is a capitalist society?
Yes, it is.
Do you believe it's going to change from ever being a capitalist society? Because I don't.
I don't believe it'll change from being a capitalist society.
And so, with that said,
Not in our lifetime.
Right, maybe not in our lifetime, but so we need to figure out how to organize and work within this capitalist society. That's just my take. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm an expert of survival, and in order how to survive, like Dr. Claude Anderson, he would tell you in a minute that our problem really stems from racism as we know it, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not too far off the mark. Is a competition of groups of people that go out and get resources to bring back to their group of people to build a community. Mm-hmm. Would you think that that's what?
And that is.
It's a fair assessment.
It's a very fair assessment, and the sadness of it is that when the person who controls the pot is the person who built the country, and we this is what hurts us in America. If we can use the term black and the black man didn't do this or the black man did this, while when we say, well, when the white man did this and the white man didn't do that, people can't get offended because we use the term white man.
Right.
Or, they want to get offended when you use those terms, but you're easy to quick to throw the term black man, whether he was faulty or not faulty, let alone give him a little bit of praise on any given Sunday. But we have to understand this country was built in such a way that the white essence is always in favor because they've managed the country. So now when you start talking about me going and getting resources for my family and getting, well, the way the system is set up today, only certain communities who get those votes, and they make it difficult for other communities to get
anything, right?
And they make it more challenging. So if I want to become my entrepreneur, I look around. I'm saying, well, why can I look around and see so many Asian fruit stores and fish markets in the black community, but a black person can't figure out, or let alone get a shop like that? I've watched and learned how from different countries they have a pipeline to bring people in, bring them right into work, whether it's for citizenship or just to get them in the country, whatever that looks like. But being able to establish the businesses, when I look around and see the kind of businesses, it's almost like we're only going to let you own a restaurant or a nail salon and a bodega, but we're not going to let you own big, giant companies. Because you go into the black and brown communities, you see the same stores in every community. You don't see no variations, and you don't see people in the communities owning their stuff. You go back when I go back when I was a child, you knew the grocery owner lived upstairs in the same building or lived in the community. Today, everyone flies into somebody's community, take all the money, they get it, and run back to their community, right back to wherever they take it.
It takes the economic strength out of that community.
Exactly.
And this is what breeds poverty.
Exactly. I've read something in the Jewish community, the dollar touches hands 7 times.
It's actually more than that. It's probably 15 times.
Before it leaves the community. Well,
Asians, maybe 12.
Right.
Hispanics, maybe 7. The second you and I spend $1, it's gone out right out of our name. It's and you know who I blame for that? The federal government. And I know we're getting ready to take a commercial break real soon, but and I'm gonna go right back to that, and because there's a narrative that comes as far up as the federal government that makes it look. We built this country. Yes. This country was not built until they brought black people here to build it, but they've written us out of the history. But after this break, I'm going to tell you exactly how.
Okay.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
And we're back. We were talking about communities, and the economic power and the lack thereof. I was telling you about Dr. Claude Anderson. Shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson. He's such a brilliant man, brilliant mind, brilliant man who's always been on the front line for our liberation. And I would, more than anything, if I ever had him on the show, I'd probably be starstruck. Big shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson. But like I think before we went to break, I was telling you how the narrative comes from a federal level. Mm-hmm. So just so I'm going to reiterate, this country did not exist until foundational Black Americans built it. Mm-hmm. But there's three people that make up a foundational Black American. I want to just touch on it real quick. You have Black folks that always lived here, that would be considered Aborigine or indigenous, or Aborigine indigenous, or indigenous Aborigine, but they are native to this land.
Correct. And
they are Black in complexion. They could pass for Negro or other, you know what I mean, whatever. But when you look at them, you're like, oh, that could be an African American. Like yes. People like Snoop Dogg has an indigenous background that he doesn't hide. 2 Chainz, Rosa Parks, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They all had indigenous backgrounds. Jimi Hendrix, Pam Grier. I mean, the list goes. Chuck Berry. The list goes on and on and on. Right. Those people were always here. We act like America was an empty parking lot until the European came here, and that's not true. Right. And true. The only reason you have what they call a red man, where you have the red in complexion, is because way back when, during the Mongoloids came in, or Asians came into the Americas during the Warrior Ice Age. They came and they mixed with the original people, which were the Folsom people, Folsom. And this is how they became red in complexion. That's the first tree or branch of foundational Black Americans. Then you had the Moors, who were traveling back and forth to the Americas before Christopher Columbus was even a thought in his daddy's head. And then you had chattel slavery. Now, here in America, in the United States of America, because Christopher Columbus never came here to the United States of America, but here in the United States of America, slavery only made up 17% of the Black population. And only 5% of all slave ships actually touched what we know to be the United States of America. So if it only made up 17%, and only 5% of the ships that went around all of the Caribbean ended up coming here, what does it tell you? We were already here. They enslaved the people that were already here. So the reality is, when you see a person from Alabama or Tennessee or Virginia or South Carolina or Mississippi, you're looking at the indigenous people, or Louisiana, you're looking at the indigenous people that were already here. Right. So I say all that to say, we're weaved in. We have this body of foundational Black American pride, because it's Pride Month. So, shout out to the Pride people, or the Proud family. But you have but I should be able to be proud too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, so as much as we've done to build this country, Washington, D.C. was built by a Black man named Benjamin Banneker, right? He'd done a lot for time. He actually invented the clock. And so, what's the name of that clock in England?
Big Ben.
Who do you think they named it after? You see what I'm saying? But these are the accomplishments, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get to where I'm trying to go. Tunnels, White Houses, plantations, toilets, everything that you can think of were built by us in this country here.
Yes.
But when people migrate here, because a lot of people migrate here because of opportunity, and the opportunity really comes off of our backs. And they migrate here for a better living, and now I want to be I want to be an American citizen. So they have to essentially take a test
Right.
to become an American citizen. And this is where I'm getting to my point right now. Do you know on that test, as everything that I just mentioned that we've created, the automobile, this and that, I could go on and on and on. Do you know that there's not one thing on that immigration test that identifies our accomplishment on that test? Everything is George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, all these white heroes that exploit. And so until we change that language, you know what I mean? We're looked at as that which is holding down or bringing down America. We're looked at as people that don't take advantage of opportunity. We're shiftless, we're lazy, we're everything but a child of God.
Right.
And so we got to learn how to change the narrative. I'm going to digress a little bit. So let's talk about the mayoral race. Who do you like and why?
Well, I say to anybody, when you're voting for an elected official, someone to support you, you need to understand who they are.
Okay.
You need to understand their value system, and you need to understand their positions. But more importantly, you need to look at a track record of service. Because if you elect someone who has never served in any capacity, and I really did the work, really do the work as a servant, not just say I'm sitting here, I'm sitting in the front, the head chair of the table, and everybody bow down and treat me as I'm a superstar.
Right.
But someone who's actually doing work, then you can make a real conscious decision. Other than that, you're caught in sound bites, because if they've never been in front of you, you're going off of mailers, you're going off of commercials, you're going off if you catch a debate where you might hear them talk for 20 minutes. That's really no clue of identifying who could be the best candidate.
Right.
As I look at this mayoral race, and with ranked choice voting coming into play, and then another thing, I'm just going to say it on the record, I never supported ranked choice voting.
Okay.
Even in the council, I spoke against it. I denounced it. I thought it was a way to take away the power of the black vote, the power of communities of color who are getting stronger in their voting block. And then now, what it is right now, it's Atlantic City.
For those that don't understand what it is, can you explain it real quick?
Ranked choice voting which is going to be implemented in the city of New York, starting. It started in a special election back in March, I believe it was. But you get to pick 5 candidates, and out of those 5 candidates, on the first round, in order to win, you have to get 50 plus 1. If you don't get 50 plus 1, then it goes down to who got the most second place votes, and whoever came in 4th and 5th in the first round, they get eliminated, and all their second points will go up to the second place person. So now here we go. If you didn't understand what I just said, imagine how many other people who are getting ready to go out and vote don't have a clue about what it's all about. But it's designed. You asked me, it's just designed to take away the power of the black community. Yes, it's voter suppression, and the school boards in the city of New York. That's how they used to do the school board elections. They dismantled and got rid of it because of the chaos that it was creating, and it wasn't an effective tool. So I don't know. I know why they came, because again, people want to get in office by trickery, and that's what this is what it is. It's a toss, like going to Atlantic City and playing dice and seeing who's gonna win. So right now, the path to victory, is doing the work. The path is being on the right side of right. And if you got to be on the right side of right, that doesn't mean that you're always going to be liked either.
Right.
Because being right is about doing the right thing. And not everybody wants to do the right thing. And when it comes to the world of politics, they want to do things to help their agenda move along. They want to move money where they want money to move. We want people who we don't particularly like to be around. Let's get them out of the house because they're slowing up and messing up our house. I'll never forget. I've been very silent and quiet for all the things that have happened to me. But I just got to say, I'll never forget when Inez Dickens said to me, when I first got in office, she said, you could have some problems down here. She said, you're too independent. Well, when 36,000 people sent me down here to do the job for them, they didn't come down and tell me come down here to kiss somebody's ring. Right. So I stayed true to the people of the 12th district, and I worked my tail off for them each and every day. But to go back to the mayor's race, you have a few candidates who have done some work. So one person that strikes my mind who's done some work was the borough president, Eric Adams. He's been in service in office for a while. He's been in law enforcement. Is he capable of doing the job? Yeah, because he was as a borough president, you are an executive of a borough managing different entities. And you're just taking it to another step, to another level.
Right.
I've watched Ray McGuire, which many people, say.
I like Ray. And it's a shame. I wish he was, he was leading more in the polls. I really like him.
Well, this is where people.
But I hope he comes back. I hope he's hearing this, and I hope if he doesn't make it, I hope he at least tries to come back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he should, because again, Mayor Michael Bloomberg set the template that you don't have to be a politician or an elected official to be elected.
Right.
So this gentleman ran $1 billion corporation. So it costs brains to do that.
Right.
And he's an executor.
Right.
You know, he's built the country, did what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's a smart man.
Right.
You know, got his great degrees, and he graduated from the top schools in the country.
Right.
So you're not talking about somebody who's just trying to say, hey, listen, look at me. This is a guy who's done the work. He just did it in the private sector. Now he says, there's a time and space that, maybe we need another flavor. So I'm not mad at him for that, because I know he's capable.
Right.
I've watched Catherine Garcia do work.
Okay.
I've watched her as the sanitation chair, and I applaud the work. I've worked closely with the Department of Sanitation on a lot of things. And then when the pandemic hit, she was responsible for getting food out to the city of New York. So is she capable? I think she's capable, because she had to do management in a stressful situation.
Right.
So, and then if you're talking about anybody else, I don't have anybody else at the say at this time. But I've watched those three do work and watched them be successful at the work that they were doing. Then after that,
Did you watch the debate?
I watched the debate, and again, I said that you get your 15 seconds, and then in that moment in time, if this is your first interaction with a candidate, you may not feel a candidate because they may not have their best game.
Right.
But if you're honest and true, it's not about having a best game, because I listened to Diana Morales speaking, and I appreciate the words that were coming out of her mouth.
Right.
Her messaging was strong, it was on the point,
right.
and she was making sense, while some of the others were trying to figure out how to stay on the
Speaking of
political
politics, someone sabotaged her, because she was actually doing good at one point, and they sabotaged her whole efforts, and once they sabotaged it, she started tanking. So I mean,
she just fired like 45 staff.
Right.
Because of this progressive movement, you
right.
want to create a union, do a work stoppage on a campaign. I mean, where are we going with some of these agendas? And this is where I just watch the system start imploding within itself.
And it's crazy, because I think the Democrat Party is really feeling the backlash, because when you have these progressives, right, what they're doing. See, the worst thing that I really think that the Democratic DNC did, Democratic National Committee, did was allow Bernie Sanders to run. That was the worst thing in the entire world, because the DNC knew, they was like, okay, he's going to represent us. They thought they were using him, but what happens is now it's like you have a virus stuck in the matrix. And so now Bernie's out, but now you have AOC. And then you're getting all these little viruses in the DNC, and they're going to eventually hurt the Democratic Party, but the Democrats have no one to blame but themselves, because they allowed Bernie to run out of greed. Yeah. And so, capitalism can stifle you. That's what happened in the Civil War, right? So it was over too much overproduction, and that's what's going to happen with social democrats. And I want to put this on the record too. I think rarely, if ever, do you ever see social democrats calling out gentrification.
No, they do.
And they don't, and if you look at it, most of their money comes from gentrifiers and developers. So you got to ask yourself, and they try to say, no, we could all have resources. No, listen, I'm for foundational Black American family. Come on, y'all really need to get it together, because they are out to bury us. They just haven't figured out how to bury us, and we got to figure out how to survive. I just really needed to say that. You did a lot of great work in District 12, and I really want to talk about some of the things that you've done. You did I could talk to it from a real natural place. I've seen you clean up the streets. I've seen you do so many things. And you know what? we're gonna have to come back. Hopefully I'll see if we could do another show, maybe Monday. But before I leave, I want to thank my host, my special guest, Andy King. This is Cap and No Cap. We on Roku, we on Apple TV, Amazon TV, and you could download the apps on your phone. And your smart TVs as well. You could do all of those things. This is your host Kevin C. Mega with special host Andy King. We touched on a lot. I'm gonna try to bring us back early next week and see if we could finish this up. So it'll be a part 2. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, man.
हो जाता है। अभी स्कूली बस है, छोटी रोड है।
How do you put up with this constant chaos?